Sports betting is an incredibly rapidly changing business these days, including yesterday when there was a massive announcement about two large players who were competitors of yours at DraftKings. The parent companies for Fox Bet and FanDuel announced they were merging, consolidating a space that right now has a lot of players and sort of some players at the top, including DraftKings, but also including Fox Bet and FanDuel. When you hear that, how does DraftKings react to that?
Yeah, so that was definitely a little bit of a surprise for us. But one of the things that we learned, and this was going through our FanDuel merger, that ultimately failed back in 2016, is we really have to focus on ourselves. We were very competitive when we were starting up. We were looking at FanDuel, we were looking at DraftStreet, and ultimately, the decisions that we make day in, day out at DraftKings is what's the best thing to do for DraftKings. So as we received the news, we looked at it. We said, great for them. There's a lot of integration talk. It's going to be hard. We know that. Integrating any two large companies is always a challenge. But ultimately, how do we become the best company? How do we create the best customer experience? How do we focus on ourselves and do the right thing? And ultimately, we believe that that's going to be what appeals to the consumer. So good for them, and I wish them luck. We've worked with FanDuel; they're a great team, and but ultimately for us, it's how do we become what we aspire to be.
We have a very tight window for asking these questions, but I do want to leave like 2 or 3 minutes at the end. So if people do have questions, I'll open it up at the very end, just so start thinking about what you might want to ask. You guys have your own news today, where you are launching in Indiana. You are launching in Iowa. Indiana is one of the states that allows mobile sports betting. Iowa does not allow mobile sports betting. What kind of data do you guys see that helps you determine what the value of one versus the other is?
Yeah, so ultimately we are very excited about the expansion of mobile sports betting. It's been a huge win for us over the course of the last year. For people that don't know, mobile sports betting became legal as of about August or July of 2018. Man, these years just all blend together for me, which allowed operators like ourselves to offer it. So it's been a big boost to the business. So as all of the states expand, we look to be one of the first people to be in. We know that a lot of our customers that play fantasy sports or daily fantasy sports, they're really engaged with, they're the skin in the game audience. They're the audience that wants to engage. They're not just happy in watching, the Patriots game, but they actually want to be part of it. They want to experience the ups and downs more amplified than just watching the game. So as we look at states like Iowa and Indiana, we're looking, how do we deliver that product, whether it's through mobile or retail channels, to the users so they can really enjoy their sports experience. From a data standpoint, we actually look to be in every state that we can possibly operate in.
Going back to the beginning, when DraftKings first launched, and DraftKings was focused on daily fantasy, and since sports betting became legal, like you mentioned, in the last 18 months, it's been at the leading edge. How did you guys think about data when you launched, and what you were trying to collect and use to drive the business, and how has it informed your sports betting approach?
Yeah, great question. To begin, our focus was actually insanely on the customer. And a lot of people talk about big data and data warehouses, but ultimately for us, it's how do we make the best customer experience? So we actually did, we tracked all of the typical analytics data of web analytics and where people drop off and, what marketing works. But we always circled back to how do we acquire customers, who, where, when, and how do we track those data points? When they go onto our website or our mobile app, what are the different friction points? And we actually spent a lot of time collecting not just the analytical data that you have an analyst crunch through, but a lot of customer data. So informational interviews. We attended a lot of events. We talked to a lot of people because that data is just as important as your data warehouse. The data warehouse gives you insights, but it doesn't always give you answers in how you look at it. So early on, especially when we didn't have all these large data stores that we have today, and we weren't necessarily focused on all the data science from day one, it's really taking the time, understanding the customer experience, looking at the data for trying to find insights, but then talking to the customer and getting that customer lens, and then building the best product and targeting the right customers that are going to deliver great returns. As we've progressed over time, obviously things like personalization and data science have become more important because ultimately those are there to make a more relevant customer experience. So we've done a lot of that. But early on, at the start of DraftKings, it was about taking the data that we have and kind of mending it with the customer insights and the customer research to provide a good customer experience.
So now that you're much bigger and you have millions of customers, how do you flip that? How do you stay in touch with the consumer and their sort of most visceral needs when you have these data sets that you can be working from that can probably give you more immediate answers of strategic ways you want to go?
That's a great question. We've hired a great team, and we've hired a lot of data scientists, and we've hired a lot of analysts. And I think culturally, we actually talk a lot about the customer internally. As a leadership team, as a management team, we talk a lot about getting out there and sending our analysts and sending our marketers to events to talk to customers and bridging that gap of saying, the customer insight is just as important as the data that you're looking at. So it actually, people get really comfortable in saying, I'm going to go and analyze a few data points. I'm going to build amazing data science models. And it's almost less comfortable for them to get that customer insight and customer research. And we're trying to bridge those gaps together by, saying all of our analysts, they have to attend at least one event where our customers are at and talk to customers. We've built up a large user research team that goes and does that. So it's almost like a backwards of where you hear a lot of people saying just focus on data science, but we do a lot of both. And both are really important because sometimes the insights that you get are so valuable that you might have never even considered it from looking at just external data. So that's what we've been starting to do a lot more of. I'd actually say in the middle of like DraftKings, when you go back to like 2015, 2016, we kind of lost that a little bit, where we became a lot more analytical and we hired brand new people. And now we're actually trying to turn the other way and saying with sports betting, it's a brand new market. It hasn't really been done in the U.S. The U.S. audience thinks about sports betting different than the European audience. We know that. Online gaming is very nascent, and we're doing a lot of that as well. How do we understand what are the needs and the desires, and how do we marry that with our ability to target the right offer, the right promotion to the right customer at the right time through our kind of big data?
How do you manage a bias if what your hand-to-hand personal relationships with customers, if that is telling you one thing and their activity on your platform is telling you something entirely different?
Yeah. So ultimately, everything is an insight. The data that you have is an insight, and the customer is an insight. And one of the things that we've spent a lot of time on is building out the appropriate kind of testing methodology. So we don't necessarily just take something that the customer has said and take it for face value. Sometimes they think they know what they want, but they really don't know what they want. And sometimes the data tells you something that actually, when you drill in and you peel the onion a few more layers, it's actually also not correct. You can look at data in many different ways. So we do a lot of testing, and everything that we roll out, whether it's product features or marketing or really anything, we say, how do we test stuff? How do we, on TV, how do we create a market that's doing one thing and another market that's doing something else? Radio, same thing. So we do a lot of that. We measure the results, and we make sure that we confirm our hypotheses or reject our hypotheses. And that's how we learn. So it's really a layered approach. There is your data and insights, there's your customer insights, but then all of that, at the end of the day, you can't really believe either one of them. There's your own insights as employees of the company. It's all of those three get married into, but at the end of the day, I will say testing and data and results are the ultimate decision makers, because if you find something that just doesn't work, it doesn't matter if your customers told you a million times that they like it, it just doesn't work for maybe the other 99% of customers that you didn't talk to. So it's a combination.
And then there are other times where you might have an idea, there is no real data against it, but as a leader in the business, as someone who has been interacting with consumers and looking at the data, you're like, oh, here's something that is novel that might take us in a direction, and you sort of got to take a shot on that.
Yep.
Sports betting is something that is a natural progression from daily fantasy being the ability to sort of put together lineups on a day-to-day basis, from particular sports. for players from particular sports. When you guys were thinking about the sports betting business, how was data informing that, and how was sort of instinct and business sense informing that?
So they're kind of blended together. We knew that the sports betting market in the U.S., even before it was legal, is about a $20 billion market. There's a lot of research out there, so we knew it's a huge market with a huge opportunity. We spend a lot of time with customers, and we know what are the things that they like to do. They like to play fantasy. They like skill games. They're very competitive. They also like sports betting. That was a common theme that kind of came out of the different discussions. So it was, a combination of actually talking to customers, looking at the market landscape, and then ultimately, our strategy and our vision of being a product for the skin in the game sports fan, and making sure that people that want to engage and want to make their sports experience more exciting, this was a natural product fit in terms of doing that. So there's, the combination of not just the market, the customer needs, our vision, that all kind of influence us to go into sports betting. So when we had the opportunity to do that in a regulated U.S. market, sitting on top of a very large customer base of sports fans that enjoy that skin in the game experience, we capitalized on that, and that's a large part of our business now.
So what is the data, let me rephrase this. What did you expect the data to tell you about sports betting and what customers wanted? And what's different than what your expectations were based on the data you've seen?
Yeah, so in talking to a lot of people, we thought that the U.S. sports fan wouldn't really understand all of the odds and how to bet on sports because they haven't really done it previously. And then in actually rolling out the product, so we went with a very casual type product explaining a lot of the features. But what we noticed is that customers actually ended up doing a lot of the research. And the research that they were, the research sites, whether it's, looking at ESPN or the Action Network or any of these, different sites, they always talked about, plus 220 or plus, 110. And they talked about the spread and the odds. So quickly, people became educated. And the casual experience actually ended up being too casual for the majority of people. And we said, you know what, we got to actually move a little bit more towards what people are used to in Vegas, and other U.S. markets, as opposed to the, who will win the game, the Patriots or the Steelers, which is where we started, to, money line Patriots Steelers, plus 110, or minus 110 on both sides. So we just missed it, and I think that that was an example of, we talked to a lot of people. They loved what we were showing them. We started testing it. And quickly, we've noticed that the market actually changed underneath us from all of the different, whether it's training that they had via watching TV or reading articles, or experiencing other sites. So we've evolved on that front.
Does anyone have any questions? We have about 4 or 5 minutes left. I want to make sure people get a shot. Otherwise, I'll just keep asking. All right, so I have found at the Action Network, similar to you, that the audience of bettors who understand betting actually just can't get enough of information. They want to pay more than you ask them to. Do you think that the data is showing you that the casual audience is getting smarter, or are you capturing sort of the smarter audience earlier than you might have expected to?
I think it's a combination of both, and we learned a lot about this in daily fantasy. There's actually this reinforcing loop that is created around sports. So they engage in sports betting, they engage in fantasy, and then they go and seek out content. They seek out who are the top fantasy picks, who are the top sports. What are the best money lines for today? What are the odds on the Patriots games? And then they end up reading content. And that informs them. It gives them hints. It tells them how to analyze it. It gives them, something that they might have not thought of. And then they play. They do a little bit better. And then they read more content. And then, on top of that, they start engaging in the sporting event more. So they're learning more about the players. They're learning more about the teams. Some of the things that they may have not paid attention to, they're now paying attention to because they have that knowledge. So what we've learned, and this is especially in daily fantasy, is that the average person's skill increases over time. And it's almost obvious. It's like, duh, like they're playing more. Of course they're going to increase over time. But it's amazing to see it in the data. We do a lot of analysis on how do people perform and how much skill there is in the different games. So it's amazing to see how that plays out. And I think content, the actual sporting events, all of that kind of blends into making a more sophisticated consumer and also a better experience for them because now they understand what they're doing a lot more than they were maybe when they first started.
You guys should probably partner with a high-end content information business.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Or maybe a league.
Yeah, exactly. We started the conversation talking about mobile betting in Indiana and Iowa, and New Jersey was the first state to offer unfettered mobile betting to the folks who are betting in the state of New Jersey. And for folks who don't know, the way sports betting is now, each individual state gets to legalize it and determine how they want their operation to run. And so some states offer legal betting. Some states offer mobile betting, like New Jersey. Other states, like Iowa, are not offering mobile betting at all. And so everybody is seeing different results. New Jersey, in the past 12 months, is now on par with Nevada, which is a 40-year-old mature market in terms of the total handle, meaning the total number of bets coming in. Are you shocked?
And 80% of it's on mobile.
Yeah, and 80% of it on mobile.
Which
so
also
what does that
maybe
told you?
not that shocking.
What has that told you about the ability of the business to grow rapidly?
I mean, it's just, there's incredible potential. We're launching in our third state today, third and on mobile. We are in Mississippi and New York on retail in addition to New Jersey. So it just, there's huge potential. We're really excited about the market. There is a huge demand for it. There's a demand for it right now, and we see it. That's why, some of these sites exist that are offering it in a black market type capacity. But we're excited about the opportunity, and we've been working very closely with regulators in the U.S. In making sure that people have a great experience. It's a safe experience. It's a fun experience. There's integrity in the way that we operate, and we believe that over the next 5 years, a large percentage of the U.S. population will have access to mobile betting, and ultimately, at the end of the day, it just makes for a more fun sport kind of engagement experience.
What's your expectation for what the top of the market can be in terms of revenue now that you've seen some early returns in mobile betting?
I think the entire market will be $15+ billion just in the U.S. alone, from what we're seeing and how New Jersey is performing and how it's continuing to grow. So it's a huge market, huge opportunity. So excited.
Awesome. Oh wait, we have one question. You have 19 seconds.
I'll be fast. I'll just speak loud. So with mobile coming on really fast, you're obviously going to attract a lot more casual bettors. How do you think about customer acquisition for the non-sports fanatic with the rise of mobile moving across more and more states?
So we believe that even the casual audience, and this is one of the things that we've learned, is even the casual audience is actually learning and engaging. And while they're maybe spending $1 or $2, they actually behave more similar to I guess, I don't want to call them VIPs, but like a person that's really engaged and knowledgeable about about the sports betting space. As we look at our customer acquisition, we try to acquire people on all different spectrums. We try to acquire high-value customers. We try to acquire casual customers. And ultimately, actually, this is where data really comes into play, is we do a lot of testing. We do a lot of TV commercials. We do a lot of radio. But ultimately, it comes down to what are the things that work to attract the audience and how valuable is that audience once they convert. But for marketing, there's so many distribution channels out there, and there's so much media inventory out there. That's where we actually end up using a lot more data, throw a lot of different creatives out there, and see what attracts the customer.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you, guys.